In the frozen silence of Antarctica long before humans walked the earth, a predator ruled with a crown of bone upon its head. Cryolophosaurus moved with strength shaped by ice and hunger its breath steaming in the bitter cold. Each step crunched against snow, carrying the weight of survival in a land where life itself was rare. Its crest caught the pale light of the rising sun, casting a shadow like a king of an ancient throne. To witness Cryolophosaurus was to see power born in the harshest land of predators sculpted by frost and time. The world was not always warm with wide forests and endless plains. There was a time when ice and shadow shaped the land. Far in the south lay Antarctica, a continent of snow and stone. Today it is locked in ice with little more than penguins and seals surviving its chill. Yet long ago, during the early Jurassic, this frozen realm held forests of conifers and ginkgo with valleys that breathed mist over rivers. Strange flowers had not yet appeared, and the land was painted in green needles and ancient ferns. The air was sharp with frost even in daylight, and the night stretched long with a bitter wind that whispered through branches. It was in this land that a unique predator walked. Cryolophosaurus, with its tall frame and crowned crest, carved its story across the cold wilderness. It was not the largest hunter the earth would ever know, but it was unlike any other. Its head bore a curved crest that rose from its skull like a frozen wave. The shape glistened when struck by sun and marked it as something different. Some may have seen it as decoration, others as a weapon of display, but in truth it was a banner of identity. To see the crest was to know this was no ordinary hunter. Cryolophosaurus moved with balance that came from generations of survival. Muscles stretched under a lean frame, its tail sweeping like a counterweight. Its teeth curved inward, built a tear and a hold. The eyes burned with a steady amber glow, never still, always searching. It lived in a world where prey was scattered and hard won. Herds of herbivores wandered across the icy forest edges. Small lizard-like creatures darted among roots. Shivering mammals scurried at night beneath the ground to escape the reach of talons. Nothing was simple here, and each breath carried the sharp edge of hunger. The forest gave both life and death. The tall conifers formed shelter against the cutting wind. Their needles fell thick across the soil, muffling sound. Cryolophosaurus knew how to use these shadows. It waited hidden, its crest low, its eyes locked on the trail of a passing herd. Patience was its ally. When a moment came, it surged from the cover with speed surprising for its size. Snow and dirt scattered as it closed the gap. The herd cried out, scrambling with desperate force. Some escaped, yet one was always slower, weaker, or simply unlucky. To be that one meant to feel the grip of jaws like iron and to fall silent in the snow. But the life of a predator was not endless triumph. Each hunt drained strength. The cold pulled heat from the body, and wounds carried danger greater than hunger. The frozen air slowed recovery. Blood spilled upon the ground froze into dark shards. For Cryolophosaurus survival was not just about strength, it was about endurance. To fall was to feed the scavengers that circled on the edge of vision. To rest too long was to lose the chance of prey. Every step became a decision, and every decision carried weight. There were rivals in this land, though none bore a crest so grand. Packs of smaller hunters stalked the shadows. They moved together quick and bold when hunger pushed them forward. Cryolophosaurus faced them not with numbers, but with sheer presence. A deep growl and the gleam of its teeth often scattered those who dared to challenge. Yet sometimes even they pressed their luck, circling with courage built on desperation. Battles in the snow became storms of claws and snapping jaws. Each clash left scars, each scar told a tale. The land itself was both ally and enemy. Rivers cut through stone ridges or surfaces, often frozen in winter. Cryolophosaurus learned to tread with care, for a single slip meant shattered bone and certain death. Mountains loomed beyond the forest, their cliffs white with frost. Valleys gathered the wind and howled at night. Prey gathered where warmth lingered near hot springs or sheltered glades. The predator knew these places like a map drawn into memory. Without that knowledge, no hunter could last long in such a land. The nights were hardest. Darkness wrapped the forest in silence, broken only by the distant cry of another hunter. Stars blazed sharp in the frozen sky. The crest of Cryolophosaurus caught the light of the moon, shining pale against its dark form. In the night, hunger grew heavier, the cold bit deeper. Yet the predator endured, moving steady and sure. It rested in hollows lined with fallen needles, its breath misting in the air. When sleep came, it was light and cautious, for danger never slept. What made Cryolophosaurus unique was not only its strength or its crest, but its place at the edge of possibility. It thrived in a land where few dared to live. Each day it fought the cold, each day it proved survival was possible even here. It was a reminder that life did not bow before ice. Life adapted, twisted, and grew into forms that could endure the harshest of trials. In the steps of Cryolophosaurus was written the message that power is not only in size but in will. The forests of Antarctica held many secrets in those ancient days. Bones of fish lay beneath frozen rivers. Insects buzzed low in the rare warmth of sunlit glades. Great herbivores moved with heavy steps across the snowy ground, their hides thick, their eyes wary. Cryolophosaurus was their shadow, a reminder that even in the land of ice there was no safety. Every trail through snow carried a story, every broken branch spoke of pursuit. In time, creatures may forget the shape of this land. Ice would swallow the forest, rivers would vanish beneath glaciers. The world would change, and the crest of Cryolophosaurus would be buried in stone. Yet in its own age it stood as master of survival. It was not invincible, but it was relentless. In the frozen silence of Antarctica, its roar cut across the valleys, a sound that carried both warning and promise. And so the story begins not with victory or defeat, but with a predator stepping into a land of ice where every day is a test and every breath a triumph. Cryolophosaurus was born into a world that demanded constant proof of strength. The first years of its life were filled with danger. As a young creature, it was smaller, faster, and far more vulnerable than the giant that it would one day become. In those early days, the frozen forests were filled with threats both large and small. Even a passing pack of scavengers could end the life of a hatchling if luck and speed failed. Yet the young predator learned to move silently beneath the ferns, to wait for the right moment to strike, and to flee when odds grew heavy. Survival itself became its teacher. As months turned into years, the body of Cryolophosaurus grew into a tall, lean frame built for pursuit. Its muscles hardened, its claws sharpened, its teeth became tools of precision. The crest upon its skull rose more prominent, as if carved from ice itself, a signature no rival could ignore. Now it stood as a shadow over the land, no longer the hunted, but the hunter. Hunger ruled its every step. The land of Antarctica, though forested in that ancient age, was still harsh. Prey herds roamed in uncertain paths and often vanished into valleys hidden by snow. To find them required patience and instinct. Cryolophosaurus moved with a rhythm guided by scent and sound. Each broken branch, each faint print in the soil became a clue. It followed trails across ridges, over frozen streams, and into deep hollows where the shadows grew thick. Days often passed without success. Its ribs pressed close to its skin, its body ached with hunger. Yet its will remained unbroken. One such hunt began with the scent of a herd drifting across the wind. These were large herbivores, their bodies covered with thick hides that resisted cold. Their legs moved slow, but their numbers gave them protection. Cryolophosaurus stalked them for hours, always downwind, always hidden. The herd moved toward a frozen river where the surface gleamed white under the pale sun. The predator waited at the edge of the trees, eyes locked on the weakest, among them a smaller adult that lagged behind. Patience stretched thin until the moment arrived. With a surge, Cryolophosaurus burst from cover snow, scattering in its wake. Its strides were long, powerful, and unrelenting. The herd bellowed in alarm, scattering in panic. The target bolted across the frozen river in desperate flight. But the predator did not falter. It knew the river ice would betray the heavy creature. With each step, cracks echoed across the frozen surface. The prey slipped crashing onto its side. That was the moment. Cryolophosaurus lunged, jaws sinking into flesh, claws tearing, as the struggle ended in a storm of snow and blood. The kill was swift and brutal, and the predator stood victorious, its crest stained with the mark of survival. Yet victory always drew eyes. From the shadows, smaller hunters crept forward, their hunger emboldened by the scent of blood. They were not as large as Cryolophosaurus, but their numbers gave them courage. The predator turned its head, eyes narrowing. A deep growl rolled from its chest, echoing through the forest. Most of the scavengers hesitated, circling, but keeping distance. One, however, rushed forward, too bold for its own survival. In an instant, Cryolophosaurus lunged, striking with jaws that ended the intruder's challenge. The rest fled, vanishing into the trees. The kill remained its own, but such encounters reminded the crest-crowned hunter that power alone was never enough. In this world, strength required constant proof. Seasons shifted across the land. Winters grew darker, colder, and food scarcer. Cryolophosaurus learned to conserve energy. It rested more often, moving only when sent promised prey. During long nights, it endured hunger with patience. Its body grew lean, yet never weak. Each star-filled sky bore witness to its endurance. Other predators fell silent during these harsh months, many never rising again. Yet Cryolophosaurus endured, shaped by struggle into something more relentless than before. As years passed, the predator grew into a legend among its rivals. Its roar became a sound recognized across valleys. Herbivores stirred with panic at the faintest echo of its call. Smaller predators gave wide paths to its shadow. But legends were not built on strength alone. They were built on trials that tested limits. One trial came with the arrival of a rival. Across the southern valleys, another Cryolophosaurus emerged. This one carried scars across its flank, and a crest slightly larger yet chipped at the edge. Two masters could not rule the same territory. The land did not hold enough prey for both. The day of their meeting began with silence. The forest grew still as if waiting. The two predators circled each other, jaws, open eyes locked. Their crests caught the sun, glowing like banners of challenge. The clash was not swift. It was a storm of claws, teeth, and roars that shook the trees. Blood splattered the snow as they struck again and again. Hours seemed to pass in that struggle, though in truth it lasted only moments. At last one stumbled, the scarred rival weakened by wounds. Cryolophosaurus lunged with final force, striking deep. The rival felt its roars fading into silence. The victor stood tall, chest heaving, crest lifted high. The land once more belonged to one. Yet even in victory, wounds ached deep. The predator limped for days, licking blood from its scars. Every movement reminded it that survival was always costly. The land changed again with time. Storms grew harsher and snow fell thicker. Prey herds wandered farther, making hunts longer and more dangerous. Cryolophosaurus pushed through valleys it had never crossed before. In one such valley, it found signs of prey unfamiliar. Strange bones scattered across the ground, larger than any it had hunted before. The air carried the scent of something massive. For days it tracked the trail, until at last it found them, a herd of towering herbivores taller than trees, their long necks sweeping through branches. They were giants compared to anything the predator had faced. To attack them was madness, yet hunger drove risk. It stalked them, waiting for weakness. Among them was a juvenile, smaller, yet still colossal. Cryolophosaurus circled, watching, waiting, until the herd slowed. Then it struck, darting from shadows with surprising speed. The herd bellowed, the ground shaking under their retreat. The young giant stumbled, isolated from his protectors. Cryolophosaurus lunged, slashing, biting, striking with every ounce of force. The juvenile roared, thrashing with its tail. A single blow could have ended the predator's life, but skill and precision guided its strikes. Slowly the young giant fell, breath fading into silence. That kill fed Cryolophosaurus for weeks, yet it came at a cost. Wounds bled across its flank, and ribs ached from heavy strikes. It lay hidden in a hollow for days, licking wounds, conserving energy. Each scar told another story of survival, and each scar made the legend grow. Rivals dared not challenge a predator who had felled a creature of such size. Time flowed like the rivers beneath ice. Cryolophosaurus aged, its body heavier, its movements slower. Yet its mind remained sharp, its instincts never dulled. It had seen seasons of plenty and seasons of despair. It had faced rivals, herds, storms, and hunger. Still it stood unbroken, a shadow in the frozen land. Every hunt, every roar, every scar built towards something greater. The rising storm of its life pointed toward a final trial, one that would test everything it had become. The frozen forests of ancient Antarctica lay silent beneath a pale sun. Snowflakes drifted through the air, settling gently on branches that had seen countless seasons pass. Cryolophosaurus stood at the edge of a wide valley, its crest glinting like a crown of fire against the white horizon. Age had etched lines into its body. Scars laced its flanks. Muscles carried both strength and weight of years. It was no longer the young hunter that once darted through shadows, but the master of this land whose legend had spread with every roar that shook the frozen ground. Yet the land was changing. Storms grew harsher. Prey herds wandered farther than ever before. Food grew scarce and hunger gnawed at even the strongest. The predator had survived storms that broke trees and floods that swept valleys. It had faced rivals and felled prey far larger than itself. But as the land shifted, so too did the threats within it. A new presence had entered the valley, one unlike any Cryolophosaurus had ever encountered. The first sign was sent. It drifted across the wind, sharp, heavy, and filled with danger. Cryolophosaurus froze, nostrils flaring as it studied the air. This was no ordinary rival. The ground carried prints larger, deeper than any it had tracked. The prints led toward a frozen river where the ice cracked under enormous weight. The predator followed, cautious, yet curious. Each step carried it closer to an encounter that would decide its fate. At last it saw the shape. From across the river emerged a beast colossal, in size with jaws that seemed to hold the power of mountains. Its body loomed above the snow, its eyes glowing with hunger and fury. This was no Cryolophosaurus rival. This was a monster born for domination, a predator that belonged to a different realm of strength. It was a giant theropod that had wandered into this land driven by the same hunger that plagued all. Cryolophosaurus knew the valley could not hold them both. The air grew heavy with silence as the two predators locked eyes across the river. For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Then with a roar that shook the frozen trees, the challenger advanced. The ice cracked under its weight as it stepped forward. Cryolophosaurus answered with a roar of its own, a sound filled with years of survival and scars of countless battles. The clash was inevitable. With a surge of speed, the crest-crowned hunter charged across the snow. The giant met ahead on jaws, snapping claws, tearing snow, exploding into the air as two titans collided. The first strike was brutal. The giant's head swung, low jaws clamping onto the shoulder of Cryolophosaurus. Pain seared through its body as blood splattered against the white ground. Yet Cryolophosaurus did not yield. With a twist, it slashed its claws across the rival's flank, tearing deep lines into its hide. The larger predator roared in fury, releasing its grip. They circled each other's snow, crunching beneath their feet. Blood dripped onto the frozen ground, marking the battlefield. Cryolophosaurus lunged low, striking at the legs. The giant stumbled for a moment, but recovered with a swing of its tail that struck like a tree falling. Cryolophosaurus crashed into the snow ribs, aching, yet it rose again, breath steaming in the frozen air. This was not a battle of strength alone. It was a battle of will. The fight raged across the valley. Each strike echoed like thunder, each roar carried across the land. Smaller creatures fled in terror, hiding from the storm of giants. The sky darkened as clouds rolled overhead, snow falling heavier, as if the world itself bore witness to the struggle. Cryolophosaurus fought with the cunning of years. It darted in and out, striking where it could, avoiding the crushing bites that could end its life in a single moment. Its crest gleamed with each turn, a banner of defiance against the larger foe. The giant predator relied on power, its jaws snapping with devastating force, its claws tearing chunks of earth with each strike. At last the battle reached its peak. The giant lunged, jaws wide, ready to end the fight, in a single crushing bite. Cryolophosaurus leapt aside, snow exploding beneath its feet. With a final surge of strength it struck. Its jaws clamped onto the throat of the rival, its claws raking across the chest. The giant thrashed, roaring with fury, shaking the ground. But Cryolophosaurus held on with every ounce of power left in its body. The struggle seemed endless until at last the roars of the rival faded into gurgling silence. Its massive body crashed into the snow, sending a tremor through the valley. Cryolophosaurus released its grip, stumbling back, blood covering its body wounds, burning with fire. The giant lay still, its shadow fading into frozen earth. The valley grew silent once more. Only the ragged breath of Cryolophosaurus broke the stillness. It stood victorious, though battered, torn, and bleeding. The land was its own again, yet victory carried a price. Every wound ached with deep pain. Its body trembled from exhaustion. The predator had triumphed, but it had given everything to do so. The snow fell heavier, blanketing the battlefield, covering the blood and the broken earth. Cryolophosaurus lifted its head, crest shining faintly through the storm. It released a final roar sound that echoed through the valley, a cry of survival, dominance, a defiance against the world itself. The storm carried the sound across forests, rivers, and mountains. Every creature that heard it knew the truth. Cryolophosaurus still ruled, but in the silence that followed, the predator knew the battle had changed it forever. It was no longer the hunter it once had been. It was a survivor carved from frost, blood, and fire. The climax of his journey had been written in snow and scar. And as the storm raged on, Cryolophosaurus stood tall beneath the frozen sky, a legend immortalized by the fiercest battle of his life. The valley lay quiet after the storm of battle. Snow covered the broken earth as if nature itself wished to hide the scars of what had taken place. Cryolophosaurus stood still, its body trembling from wounds that ached like fire. Its breath steamed into the cold air each exhale, a cloud rising into the pale sky. The giant rival lay silent and unmoving, its massive frame already half hidden by the falling snow. The land belonged once more to the crown hunter, but the cost weighed heavy upon its blood-marked frame. For long moments, Cryolophosaurus did not move. It stood with its head low, eyes scanning the horizon, as if expecting another challenge to rise from the storm. But none came. The valley was silent save for the whisper of wind weaving through ice-laden trees. Slowly, Cryolophosaurus turned away from the fallen beast and limped toward higher ground. Each step left dark stains in the snow, a trail of pain, but also proof of survival. On a ridge, overlooking the frozen river, it paused. The view stretched far and wide across the white wilderness. Herds of small herbivores gathered in the distance, drawn by the scent of blood, yet wary of approaching. For them, the battle was a reminder that danger walked the land, and that the ruler of the valley still lived. Cryolophosaurus lifted its head, and though weak, its presence sent them scattering back into the forest. Fear remained stronger than hunger. The predator lay down upon the ridge muscles, shuddering beneath its weight. Its crest caught the last light of the sinking sun, gleaming faintly like a crown of fire against the endless white. Memories stirred within it. Memories of hunts long past the rivals faced and defeated, of storms endured and rivers crossed. Every scar told a story. The battle that had just ended was not the first, and it would not be the last, though it was unlike any other. The giant had forced it to summon every ounce of will and strength. That victory had left it more than scarred. It had left a change. For days, Cryolophosaurus remained near the ridge. It hunted only when necessary, conserving its strength as wounds slowly closed. Snow and cold numbed the pain, but healing came with time. Birds wheeled above, circling the carcass of the fallen rival. Soon scavengers gathered, clawing the remains and tearing flesh from bone. Cryolophosaurus watched from its perch, not with hunger, but with caution. The rival's body fed many creatures, and in this frozen world such balance was necessary. One death gave life to many. The crown predator understood this truth, though not in words, but an instinct born of the ancient rhythm of survival. The valley grew quiet again after the scavengers stripped the remains. Only bones stood against the snow, a monument to the clash of giants. Cryolophosaurus passed near them once, but did not linger. It had no need to claim trophies. The scars across its body were enough proof of the victory, etched forever in flesh and memory. The world moved forward. Storms returned. The river froze deeper than before. Night stretched long and bitter cold, wrapping the land in silence. Through it all, Cryolophosaurus endured. Hunger drove it to follow herds across icy plains. Sometimes it hunted alone, striking swiftly and retreating into the forest. Other times it waited in ambush, letting prey come near before unleashing its strength. Though its body bore the marks of struggle, its mind remained sharp, its instincts keener than ever. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, the predator stood upon the highest ridge of its territory. From there it saw the expanse of its world. Frozen rivers glittered like glass beneath the fading light. Forests stretched dark and heavy with snow. The wind carried scents of prey, distant but alive. Cryolophosaurus raised its head, releasing a roar that rolled across the valley. The sound was not only a warning to rivals, but a declaration to the world. Despite storms, despite hunger, despite the fiercest of battles it lived. The sound echoed through cliffs and forests, reaching every ear across the land. Smaller creatures trembled at the voice of the crown hunter. Even in silence, after the echo faded, the valley seemed to remember. The legend of Cryolophosaurus grew not through stories told by others, but through presence carved into the earth itself. In time, the predator moved once more across the land, its strength returning with each passing day. Though it had triumphed, it understood through instinct that every victory was temporary. The world changed, always shifting, always testing. There would be more battles ahead, storms fiercer than before, and rivals that sought the crown of survival. Yet Cryolophosaurus carried no fear, for it had faced the greatest test of its life, and emerged scarred but unbroken. As winter deepened and the land froze harder than ever, the crowned hunter continued to roam. It stalked the frozen forests, it crossed icy plains, it drank from rivers that cracked beneath its weight. Life remained harsh and unforgiving, yet each breath of the predator was defiance against the cold. Its crest burned in the pale light of the sun, like a flame that refused to die. In the frozen silence of Antarctica, Cryolophosaurus had written its tale in blood, frost, and fire. And though the world moved on those storms, erased tracks in snow, buried bones, the legend of the crowned predator endured, carried in the memory of every creature that heard its roar. The frozen land stretched endlessly under a pale sky as another storm swept across the valley. Snow fell thick and heavy, erasing tracks and softening the scars of old battles. Time moved forward relentless and uncaring, yet one figure still roamed across the endless white. Cryolophosaurus carried its scars with pride, each mark a memory carved into flesh, a story that no storm could wash away. It stood tall upon the ridge as night descended, its silhouette framed against the shimmer of stars above. The icy wind cut across its frame, yet it did not bow. For every breath was proof of defiance, proof that life could endure even in the harshest corner of the world. Its crest glimmered faintly beneath the moonlight like a crown of ice, marking it not just as a predator, but as a symbol of survival itself. The valley below lay silent but alive. Herds moved cautiously through the snow, guided by instinct and hunger. Smaller predators circled in shadows, always alert, always searching. Life went on as it always had, shaped by struggle and change. Yet above them all, the cry of Cryolophosaurus lingered in the air. The roar carried to the forest, through cliffs and over frozen rivers. It was a voice both fierce and timeless, a voice that declared that the crown of survival still rested upon its head. No rival, no storm, no hunger had broken it. The sound echoed far into frozen silence, a mark upon the land, as lasting as the bones buried beneath the snow. In that moment, Cryolophosaurus was not only a hunter, it was a legend. Its tale was not told in words, but in echoes of battle and scars across its body, in the fear and awe it inspired. Long after the storm would fade, long after tracks vanished beneath ice, the memory of the crowned predator would endure. Upon the edge of the frozen world, under a sky painted with stars, Cryolophosaurus walked forward into the night. Each step was heavy with history, yet alive with strength. The land remained cold, merciless, and eternal. Yet so too did the spirit of the crowned hunter, who had claimed its place in the endless song of survival.